There was a time in the distant past when fresh-faced young engineers like me were chosen to rebuild all the computers in the office. Ah, what a time that was, standing by users' desks waiting for them to log off, unplugging machines and lugging them around the build room. Hold on, that process was painful. So it got me thinking, is there a way to remotely re-provision, image and manage existing Office PCs from a single admin workstation? My cunning 3-step plan is to add 5 PCs to AutoPilot, Entra join them using a provisioning package and bulk factory reset them in Intune so that they pick up a deployment profile. All this done remotely using PowerShell. In fact, from this Windows 11 PC, which I changed from the public network category to the private one, since it's required for PowerShell remoting to work. While I was here, I activated the Windows Remote Management Service, which is how PowerShell connects to remote machines on the local network. Another thing to do was to set the Web Services Management WSMan value to all, which allows this PC to connect to the machines on this network. Now I turned my attention to the 5 PCs that I wanted to connect to remotely. I again changed the network category to private and also enabled PowerShell remoting, which activates the WinRM service and adds appropriate firewall rules. Back on the admin PC, I created a folder named AutoPilot and created a text file with the list of 5 PCs that I wanted to connect to. In the real world, this might be exported from the router's DHCP list. Using the amazing invoke command, I tested connectivity to the 5 PCs by pulling off some host information for each PC. Now that I had connectivity, I installed the script recommended by our good friends at Microsoft, which can get hardware hashes from each PC in a convenient CSV file. To do this, I created a variable to store the list of PCs in, and then ran the script adding a group tag named Existing Devices. The CSV file is saved in the current folder, and before I show you how I uploaded it to Intune, let me show you the dynamic group I created that will be assigned to the AutoPilot deployment profile. All PCs get added to this group automatically by matching the group tag Existing Devices. Next, let's take a look at the AutoPilot deployment profile I used for this lab. For those of you familiar with the traditional build process, you can think of a AutoPilot profile as the provisioning process, and the Intune configuration profiles as similar to group policy. The ideal is to remove the need of gold images and configure everything from Intune and rebuild devices at will remotely using AutoPilot. Uploading the CSV file tells Intune that these PCs are AutoPilot devices. Using the hardware hash, Intune can securely find them on the internet and re-provision them. No more physically moving PCs around, and no more build rooms needed. It takes 5 to 10 minutes for the devices to be imported, after which they are listed in Intune. I verified that the group tag was showing, that the device had been assigned to a profile, and that the deployment profile was the correct one. Now is time to prep the 5 PCs. Back on the admin workstation, I installed the Azure AD PowerShell module, connected to my Microsoft 365 tenant, and created a service principal. You may ask why I did this, and that would be a good question. It turns out that without this, I can't get a bulk token for my provisioning package when using Windows Configuration Designer. Having now left you in a state of utter confusion, let me explain. A provisioning profile can be used amongst other things to Entra join computers, but needs authorization to do so. That's why we need a token, and to get that token, an account with permissions must exist in the tenant. In other words, the service principal that I just created. Windows Configuration Designer can be downloaded from the Microsoft Store. I used a desktop devices provisioning package type since the target devices are Windows PCs. In the wizard, I set a computer name pattern and got the bulk token by authenticating to my Microsoft 365 tenant. The only real setting I'm really interested in is the Entra join so that I could centrally manage the computers remotely. This would allow me to factory reset the target devices in Intune so that they can pick up the deployment profile and effectively receive the equivalent of a gold image from Intune. Once the provisioning package was saved, I copied it to my working directory and then went back to PowerShell. Here I created sessions to the 5 remote PCs and stored them in the variable SS. To copy the provisioning package to the remote computers, I used a for each loop to loop through the 5 sessions and the copy item command and toSession argument to copy the file to each computer. Next, I used the invoke command that can handle all the sessions in one line to install the provisioning package quietly on each remote PC. You should also note that I cleaned up after myself. In the last command, I deleted the provisioning package from each computer because some terrible person could copy that file and use it on other computers to perform an Entra join, all without even telling the benevolent overlords in the IT department. Lastly, being the responsible man I am, I closed the 5 sessions that were open because everything else left to do can be done from the Microsoft admin portals. In the Entra portal, I confirmed that the devices were available, and I also waited for them to show up in Intune because I have automatic enrollment enabled. This means that any Entra joined devices will use Intune as their mobile device management solution, and sure enough, after a little while, all 5 devices appeared. The final step to reprovisioning these PCs was to wipe them, and I did this using the bulk device action option. This then kicked off the AutoPilot deployment for the 5 PCs I added here. Then I sat back and watched the fruits of my labour as the computer's factory reset themselves, after which AutoPilot took care of the rest. Actually, I didn't sit back because the reset process can take a while, so I did some extremely important work which may or may not have involved some cake and a cup of tea. For some reason, one PC took longer to reset, but all was well again when it finally caught up with the other 4. I had triumphed, and the lab was a success. I had successfully demonstrated how standalone Windows 11 computers can be refreshed using Microsoft's modern provisioning and configuring solutions in the cloud. The best part was that it was all remotely done. What you see on screen is the end user experience when given their newly refreshed computer. One last thing before I go. Show me that I'm not talking to myself, and like this video and subscribe to this channel. The fate of one former IT desktop engineer lies in your hands.